I turned Cloud into a full-time analyst of my altcoin portfolio. It scans the entire allocations, the risks that I have in my portfolio, and it tells me when to sell my positions. Now, in this video, I'm going to tell you exactly step by step some simple steps you can take in order to improve the execution of your portfolio and the trading you do. The altcoin markets are finally waking up as some of my positions are doing really well, and I've decided to corner my portfolio mostly into the AI versus crypto convergence, which is Near, which is with Tensor. Unfortunately, I do not have any Hyperliquid. I do not have any Zcash, which I should have been having in my portfolio. But other than that, we can see some momentum, especially within the fact that Near and Tau are doing better, Renzo is doing great or has been doing great, and Peak starts to wake up, which is a small position within my portfolio, which is currently doing a lot of within the DePIN and robotics side that's finally getting the traction that it should be having. But because of the fact that the volatility has increased, I've decided to make some posts on X where I'm going to do some changes in my portfolio. Some of them have been doing great, some of them haven't been doing great. So last week we did one with the Renzo position that we decided to close at a good point, and I was happy with that. But then I decided to rotate that back into another asset, which is Wormhole, which then was a mistake to make because everything else just corrected down as Bitcoin came down a little bit, and all of these altcoins imply more risk, and when they have more risk they have more variance, and when they have more variance they go down even more. So that is what technically happened. So it didn't make any sense to start rotating those assets, and I rather could have gone into cash with a little bit more cash, and that's where I decided to change my approach, where I wanted to integrate more of Cloud and the LLM structure within my trading, as we are also doing that within the fund. Our strategies are completely manual based, or at least we design the strategies from our own, and we optimize and code those through several LLMs. And the amount of progress that we've made with that is staggering. So why not just do it by simply using it within the altcoin portfolio? Given the fact that AI doesn't have any emotional behavior, it's going to be very rational, and it's going to provide me the assistance in order to execute the right trades when it comes to the portfolio. So it gave me a surprise trigger of not selling an altcoin, which I wanted to sell. And that's going to be discussed at the end of this video, where I dive into the comments that Claude has been doing to me. But the reason that I was looking to explore more into using AI or a conservative strategy in that sense is because of the lessons that I've learned over the past few years. I've been going all in into an altcoin portfolio with full risk, but it's not going to end up with the right structure for me. I want to have conviction, and when I have conviction, I want to place my bets. But I would like to be compounding my returns as much as possible, which means that I need to be out of the markets more than in the markets, because most of the time the markets are just not favorable for the conditions for me to trade in. And if that is the case, I need to start taking profits a little bit more aggressively, given the fact that these assets are more riskier. And that is going to improve my portfolio variance, as currently my portfolio variance is enormous. I've been going down 70 to 80% in 1.5 years' time. And if I continue to do it like this, probably I'll go up to 5, 6, 700%, but then again correct by a lot, which I do not want to have. But at least at this point in time, I have a lot of conviction in the markets. I do have a clear thesis of how I would like to start taking those profits. But by having those big positions in those protocols, I can clearly design a framework that analyzes the charts for me and then decides for me when I need to start, say, taking those profits, and when I need to start building more cash, or need to start building more Bitcoin, or need to start building more Ethereum, which is then also a favorable framework for yourself to start working with. So I think that AI can help you a lot by designing and building those frameworks and assist you on the trading in order to improve your trading. Because essentially, all of the mistakes that people make are mostly emotional based. So how does that work? Well, first of all, if you want to use it, in my case, I think the best LLM out there is Cloud. So you need to get Max or Pro. You can use Opus 4.7. I've been using all of the versions, 4.5, 4.6, Sonnet. But clearly Opus 4.7 is by far the best one out there. You can start building projects within the platform. So I've got multiple projects in there, which are for the fund, which are for the venture capital, which are for the marketing side, which are for the podcast. And within those projects, you can start generating certain chats. And within those chats, you can just define one task. And for me, I've done it with the altcoin portfolio. There's just a clear task with a clear framework and guidelines on how I'd like to prefer trading those assets and the indicators and metrics that I want to use for that. And then it starts to learn and improve the way of finding the conclusions and starts to learn more, because AI is not going to be perfect. It will tell you to sell too early because of the data that it has. It will continue to improve after that. But that is something that you need to be aware of, because on the other hand, you as a human being won't be perfect either. You will be making a lot of mistakes. I've been making a ton of mistakes when it comes to the portfolio that I've held since the summer of 2024. But overall, I've built a framework on risk, on sigma deviations, RSI triggers for getting in and out of positions. And on top of that, I've got multiple layers in the sense of where is Bitcoin? Is it breaking down? How heavy is the correlation between those assets? Should I scale out of Bitcoin or should I scale out of my altcoins when Bitcoin breaks down? And I choose manually which fundamental narratives I'll be chasing. And that's why I've decided to place big bets on Near and on BitTensor. But Cloud has assisted me over this week already with some of the decisions that I've made. I'm sorry to stop you here for a second, but this episode is brought to you by OKX, our partner, and they just had their biggest announcement, which is futures are back in Europe. It's called XPerps, which is a fully regulated platform within Europe to trade futures in crypto, which we haven't had for the last 1.5 years. You can use all the crypto that you have on your exchange as collateral to trade those futures within the platform. And the best part, the liquidity in the books is matching with their global engine, which is the global markets on OKX. And you can actually use the collateral in the hedge mode to hedge your positions and therefore still generate the funding rate that is on the exchange available. The best part, if you sign up today, you get $36 in free if you are in the first 10,000 users that sign up, with the link beneath in the description. Now, let's continue back to the episode. The altcoin portfolio has been going up, finally. It's now around $75,000. We have invested 160 grand, so there's still a lot to come from there. But at least some projects near BitTensor have been doing great. And that's why earlier on Thursday, I provided one short update that I've started trading my altcoin portfolio. I've sold my Renzo earlier on. I've actually rotated that into Wormhole. But given the fact that we've seen some momentum here with Peak, I had to make a decision of, am I going to hold the position or am I willing to sell a little bit out of that position in order to be a little bit more conservative and rotate that towards other assets, or just stack my cash and wait for a dip to come? Cloud told me actually to sell around 20 to 25%, hold it into cash. I went against Cloud and I actually decided to add it into some other positions that have been going down, because Cloud told me that Renzo, for instance, is not interesting at this point. So we'll see in the future what that is going to bring to me. But what I use when it comes to trading those assets is essentially when this trend starts to go up with the 21 moving average, the gap between the current price and the moving average can be defined through sigma variations, so the amount of distance between the two. And the heavier that is, the more likely one of the two will come back to each other, and that is when you get a mean reversion play, But if you combine this on multiple time frames alongside with the RSI being above 70, you usually get good triggers and indications of when you need to be getting out of a position, at least partially or completely. Well, in my case, I'm not going to be selling the entire position until it's such an obvious case that I need to get out of the position. So I can just do it with 20% here, 20% there, and move it towards other assets, or start building up my cash even more. And one of the key essential parts here is that at this point, I'm allocated by, I think it is 95, 96%. I still have a little bit of cash left, but I'm going to be building my cash position a little bit more in the coming period in order to be making sure that I can use that money to buy the dip when there's a clear mean reversion or trend trade that I want to take. But as you can see with Peak, we have seen this initial move in May from 1.8 cents all the way towards 3.2. And that caused the gap between these two only on the daily time frame. And it also caused the RSI to be high. This is one of those indications where it went down 30% after that in 2-3 days, which then gives you an opportunity to be trading those depending on which time frame you're in. I'm looking at the daily time frame, and clearly with this wick up here, it is doing the exact same trigger. So I decided to be selling a little bit of that position. I've sold $500 in Peak. Now the stack is still 1.5k left, and I decided to rotate that back into Renzo. I've sold my Renzo here at 7 cents. Great trade. I've actually allocated that in Wormhole. But now, given this correction has been taking place, I'm willing to be allocating again into Renzo, given the fact that we are having the opposite of the upside in Sigma. We are actually getting the downside in Sigma, which then provides a great opportunity to get into, and we are approaching a higher time frame support. Additionally, there is the Wormhole position that I've also added into, and the reason for that is that it's again on a high time frame support level, which I do not expect to break down unless Bitcoin collapses down, which I don't think is going to happen. At this point, we're just consolidating with Bitcoin, which means that we likely are going to get more momentum in the altcoins, which we have been seeing in some of those projects. So how does this work for me when it's going to be giving me the advice to take into these positions? Well, at this point, I just have a very simple framework where I just use Cloud as my sparring partner, or like using it for arguments, or just doing the analysis with some manual work, which is I deposit all the charts on a daily basis in there. I can actually use a drive and connect it to Claude, where it just gets the data itself. But that's what I'm doing, and I've built the framework that I've just discussed, which is Sigma velocity or Sigma variance and velocity on the higher time frames, which is the weekly, the 3-day, and the 1-day. And then it's also connecting that with the RSI. And the layer on top of that is basically analyzing the risk that there is with Bitcoin. And if that is increasing, I need to start selling the positions within the altcoin portfolio. So I've done this in Dutch, as you can see, with Near as well. And it technically says to me that I should not be selling Near at this point yet, which feels like the opposite of what I currently am doing with the portfolio, because the portfolio is 41% allocated into Near. But given all the frameworks that I have, it's clearly saying that it starts to get into a run at this point. So there are still a lot of levels to go before we can start selling out of this position. Currently, we are in the 1.45 to 1.65 euro area, which is the exit framework that I've designed or that Claude has built. And it says do nothing. But once we get towards the 1.75 euros, 1.85 euros, that's when we need to start trimming 20 to 25% if the Sigma or the velocity is giving me signals to start de-risking the position. So this is the first few steps that I make, and it built a complete regime of how to get out of the positions. And when I inject the rest of the charts, it also gives me a strategy of how to inject money again into positions. What I'm going to be doing with these LLMs is I'm going to be building a dashboard where all these triggers can be optimized and used, which then gives me a signal on Telegram on when I need to sell or buy a certain position. So I don't need to do that manually anymore. It's all just very simple work that you used to do as a manual trader that you can now automate through Claude. And that's why I am going to be building a more conservative strategy that if I want to be out of the markets, I can be out of the markets and then use that money to be getting into the markets when I think there is a lot of conviction. And that conviction is the part where I decided to add $1,000 from the cash that I still had into the position of Wormhole, which I think is currently the right decision to make as we are currently experiencing some momentum in the altcoin market. So right now is the right stage to be allocating into those altcoin markets. Next week, I'll be diving more into this. We're also going to analyze a specific altcoin. So make sure to subscribe and I'll see you again on a new video next week. Ciao.